Boo bitches! Welcome to episode 193 of C3 Crystals, Cauldrons, and Cocktails. I'm River Kane, and today I am going to be talking about something that witches are very good at avoiding, endings, which I thought was good timing since it's the end of one year and the beginning of another. I mean, we all love beginnings. New moons, new decks, new journals. We will manifest the hell out of a fresh start. But endings are quiet, awkward, uncomfortable, and they don't come with an aesthetic filter either. So, endings don't sparkle. They just sit there and judge you. So today, we're talking about ritual endings, why witches across history took them seriously, why unfinished endings linger, and how to actually close chapters instead of just, walking away and hoping nothing follows you. I should tell you all, I am very tired this week. It's been a long week. I think I'm fighting off a cold. So hopefully I'm not just rambling on nonsense. I hope you all forgive me. Anyway, here's the thing. An unclosed chapter leaks, and witches, we notice leaks. So we got a lot to talk about when it comes to endings. But first, let's talk about a cocktail. Yay! So I call this one the final cut, an ending ritual cocktail, so to speak. So the vibe is bittersweet, clean break, emotional clarity with a bite. It's like texting, I wish you well, and actually meaning, I'm never going to speak to you again. So the ingredients are raspberry vodka. Y'all, I am so into raspberry vodka right now. All over the holidays, I drank hot chocolate with raspberry vodka in it. It is chef's kiss, the best thing ever. Anyway, so this drink, I'm utilizing my raspberry vodka. It's got raspberry vodka, lemon juice, simple syrup or honey syrup, which you all know I'm into that lately too. 2 to 3 dashes of bitters. You can use whatever flavor profile you want. It's optional, but I do like it. A splash of Prosecco, or you can use soda if you want to, for that new chapter energy, and then ice. You can garnish it with lemon peel or a lemon twist, or a single raspberry, which is dramatic, fragile, and perfect if you ask me. So you add the raspberry vodka, lemon juice, simple syrup, and bitters into a shaker with ice, and you shake it like you're releasing something that absolutely deserves it. Strain into whatever glass you want to use, top lightly with your soda water or Prosecco, and you garnish it with intention and maybe a quiet finally. The magical tie-ins are raspberries equate with emotional honesty, heart healing. Lemon corresponds to cleansing, clarity, and energetic reset. And the bitters kind of honors what hurt without staying there, something that hurt and moved on. Okay, so first things first, what is an ending? In a witchy sense, an ending is not failure, loss, or punishment. It's a deliberate, energetic closure. So think of it as turning off the spell instead of letting it run into in the background forever, like we do on our computers. It's like that open tab in the background that we are trying to stop. We're turning it off. We're closing it. Closing a door that so something else can open. That's also something that endings are good for, is closing one thing so that the next thing can open. Because if you got stuff still that need to be closed, you can't move on. And it's also about telling the universe the cycle is complete. You can stop looping this looping lesson now. An ending is active, not passive. A mundane ending is, I stopped doing this thing. But a witchy ending is more like, I acknowledge the thing, I've released its energy, I've reclaimed my power, and I've closed that energetic tab that has been running inside my soul. One is avoidance and the other is spell work. That's the difference between normal humans, muggles doing their closures and witches doing ours. So endings are harder than beginnings because beginnings feel active, endings feel passive. Beginnings promise control. I can do this thing. I'm going to do XYZ. It's going to be great. Whereas endings demand that you accept what's already happening or happened. Endings force us to witness what actually happened, not what we hoped would happen. And that can hurt sometimes. Beginnings are aspirational. Endings are brutally honest. An ending asks, what did this cost me? What did I learn? What version of myself is staying behind? And that can also be hard. We're leaving a piece of ourselves behind when we're closing things. And witches historically understood this. That's why endings were marked, not ignored. I mean, you can't just ghost a chapter and expect it not to hunt you later on down the road, right? So, incomplete endings and lingering energy. So, let's talk a little bit about emotional residue, energetic cords, repetitive patterns, and why does this thing still affect me? So, most people think something is over because you stopped doing it or it stopped happening. But witchcraft says something is over when its energy has been released. Unfinished endings often show up as repetitive dreams, emotional flare ups out of nowhere, getting triggered by things you thought were, quote, over, feeling watched by your own past. If you keep reopening the same emotional tab, it's still running in the background. And witches didn't call this trauma or psychology, they called it unsettled business. So let's look at history and the cultural rites of closing that witches did in the past. So let's think about funerary rites. And sometimes this had to happen back in the day when there wasn't even a body present. So how do you do closure when there's no body? I mean, historically, many cultures performed a full funerary rite without a body. Maybe they died at sea. Maybe they were missing soldiers. Maybe it was a plague that wiped out so many the bodies had to be burned and you didn't get back your own loved one's body. Maybe they were exiled or just disappeared. So the soul still needs that closure. The living definitely did for sure. And so that's why they would do these closure rites for even if they didn't have a body. So the witchy takeaway from this is an ending does not require physical proof. It requires acknowledgement. And a modern magical parallel might be grieving a relationship that never gave closure, or mourning a version of yourself that didn't die, it just kind of faded, letting go of a future that you had planned but never lived. I mean, those are all hard things. If your heart is over it, your ritual doesn't need receipts. You don't have to have that body, so to speak. Also, back in the day, they would do things like burning old tools or clothing. Fire was always used for ending initiations, to mark life transitions, to destroy old identities, to prevent spirits or energy from lingering. So old clothes, tools, or symbols were often burned so that that role couldn't follow you. Whatever those items meant couldn't follow you into the future. It wasn't destruction, so to speak. It was more like a containment. And the witching meaning is objects hold memory. Burning them says this version of me is complete and may not follow. A modern example might be burning spell notes that you no longer need, that you've worked through, that you've grown from. Um, deposing, disposing, wow, disposing of ritual tools tied to a closed chapter, letting go of clothing linked to survival, that survival mode that you had to go into. Get rid of that shit because every time you see it or wear it, it's going to hold you back to that past. So, and since we left one year now and are now going into another year, 2026, that burning of the bay leaf that we do or did on New Year's Eve, that's burning what you no longer want to carry forward. That's something that I do personally. I think a lot of witches do is burn the bay leaf things with the wording on them, or it could be a note. My friends that were with me that I had podcast last week with me that I I drummed them into. I hope you enjoyed that, by the way. It was really fun to do. They were so funny. But anyway, they actually, I mean, I do, I had them burn notes of things that they didn't want to carry forward. So it's a thing. And I think a lot of us do it. Okay. So, burning what you no longer want to carry forward is important. And my husband might be surprised to hear me say this, but you don't have to keep everything, quote, just in case. And I know he thinks that I do. Like, yeah, I'm one of those hoarder type people, I guess, in his eyes anyway. The universe isn't a storage unit. Maybe I need to take that advice. My husband would be so happy if I took that advice. And honestly, talking about how we love the new year and how the beginnings are fun for everybody. I do. I have a list of all this cleaning that I want to do and, all this renovation that I want to do on the house. Anyway, in many traditions, people paused before leaving their home forever. So you sell the house, and before you leave, especially if you've named your house, like Rebel Root is my home. And if and when we ever do move from here, I will take a good long while to do a proper goodbye to her. A lot of people say farewell at the doorway every morning. That threshold of crossing over from inside your house to outside your house, that's a moment of no return. And that can symbolically apply to all kinds of scenarios. Crossings aren't about distance, it's about a decision that you make. So think about things like in today's world, leaving a job, um, ending a long relationship, closing a home, altar, or a phase of practice. An ending becomes real when your body participates in it. So year-end fires, noise rituals, and boundary sealings, sealing like not a ceiling over your head, but a sealing like SEAL. Um, Historically, these bonfires and fire was used all the time. And it wasn't just fire. It was also noise like bonfires, bells, drums, shouting, fireworks. We still do some of those things today. But it wasn't used to celebrate, but to drive out lingering energy, to wake the land, to seal boundaries, to reset spiritual space. Silence was dangerous. Noise marked the completion. So basically, endings need a period, not an ellipsis. Um, Modern versions might be the cleansing rituals we do at the year end. Sound baths. I love a good sound bath. Clapping out energy. Um, Spoken closure before your New Year's intentions. I have one friend who her family gets out the pots and pans at midnight and bangs the pots and pans to make noise to mark that ending of one year as they go into another. I mean, the thought is if you don't close out one year, it's going to follow you into January, kind of like an unfinished email thread. I mean, it's not too late. Even though we're now into early weeks of January, it's still not too late. Go ahead and do that ending ritual and move on. This is still the early part of the new year. You can still do it. Another ancient tradition for endings was called naming endings. I mean, and it's basically when they would name that ending aloud. So speaking endings aloud was critical in like oaths, divorce rites, mourning ceremonies, initiations, banishments. Words weren't symbolic, they were actually binding back then. So to name something was to fix it in reality. And this just reminds us that our words really do have power. If you say I'm done, it helps bring it to be. So be careful, like if you're in the middle of an argument with your loved one, be careful of the words you use because I'm done is a very energetic ending, I suppose. So just be careful that you don't end something with your words by naming it aloud when you really don't mean it. Witchy meaning of this, to sum it up, is that silence keeps endings unfinished and speech completes them. And it works because your subconscious hears it, your nervous system releases it, and the energy stops floating in limbo. And if you won't or really don't want to say it out loud, then that means part of you still wants it open and maybe it isn't ready to be an actual ending. Maybe there's more of you, for you to do before you can actually do that ritual ending. Historically, endings were dangerous. They were liminal, vulnerable, and that's why cultures marked them. They marked them with the fire, the sounds, witnesses, repetition, not just because it was poetic, but because it was protective. Ancient people didn't just say it is what it is and, move on like a lot of us do today. They said, someone light some of this shit on fire. It's time to move on. So let's talk about ending identities, relationships, and eras. There are all kinds of different endings. So, ending versions of yourself. Some endings don't involve other people at all. They just involve a version of you that survived something, or the identity that kept you safe, or the role you played to be loved. Don't shame that version of you. Be proud of what it was and be ready to do that ending and move forward. Be proud of who you were and how far you've come. You can mark that ending of yourself that you aren't you don't want to be proud of, but I'm telling you, even though you might not have been a person that you liked, it was needed to get you to where you are, and now you can do this ending ritual to say goodbye to that self that you aren't so happy with, to move on into the future. You can leave labels behind. So this ending isn't about quitting magic. It's about quitting boxes. This think outside the boxes. So at some point, a label that once felt like it was empowering, it starts to feel like it's restrictive, it's performative, or like homework that you never agreed to. So maybe you were once, quote, a crystal witch or a green witch or a chaos witch, and suddenly you're like, wow, why am I explaining myself to strangers like this is a job interview? Labels are training wheels. They're not lifelong contracts. They help us to find a community where we're learning, but eventually the label becomes too small for the life we're living, for the experiences that we're going through. And sometimes that ending feels guilty. Sometimes it feels like you're betraying a path or disappointing an invisible council of witches who absolutely don't exist. But you know what I'm saying. Sometimes you feel like, I'm supposed to be a swamp witch, and now I'm feeling the ocean. And you feel guilty about that, but you're not abandoning your craft. You're just reclaiming authorship of who you are now. And that's a good thing. Outgrowing spiritual paths. So when what once saved you no longer fits you, that's an ending as well. This one hits hard, and you outgrow a spiritual path, and it doesn't seem dramatic at first. It's kind of subtle. You might notice that your rituals feel hollow, that the language just doesn't land right with you, that the rules feel more controlling than clarifying, more limiting than free, I guess is the right word. And then comes the panic. You're like, oh my God, what if I'm doing this wrong? What if I lose my protection? If I change from this path that I've locked myself into, what if? It reminds me of that saying, what if I fall? And the answer was, oh my darling, but what if you fly? It's that kind of thing. You know, this worry about what if I'm spiritually homeless now because I don't feel like I'm a swamp witch anymore, but I don't really know what I am. You know, outgrowing your path doesn't mean it failed. It means it worked, actually. And the path that got you through a specific version of yourself just no longer exists. And that's okay. Spiritual paths are not marriages. It's more like they're apprenticeships, they're maps, that kind of thing. You are allowed to take what served you and leave the rest behind without apology. Don't apologize for that. Let's talk about relationships that ended emotionally before they ended physically. I mean, there is a lot of people that are probably still in emotional relationships that they need to put an ending to, and it's just really hard. This is the longest, messiest ending of all, really. These are endings that have haunted people for years because the relationship didn't end. It kind of emptied, and you stayed or are staying. because of history, because of logistics, because leaving is harder than, you know, grieving after you get out. So emotionally, though, you left months or years ago, and it's time to say goodbye. This kind of ending creates lingering guilt, confusion about when is it really over? Is it over? Are we really done? Am I still trying? A sense of unfinished business that isn't actually unfinished. It's really finished. You just don't want to admit it to yourself. So the emotional ending counts. You just got to get your body physically there too. You don't need a dramatic breakup, a final fight, or an official closing statements that I'm done, and where you walk out for an ending to be valid. If the energy's gone, that bond has already shifted. You can do a ritual or even speak out to the universe something like, I release myself from waiting for closure that already arrived. You can mourn something that ended slowly. Endings are not always really fast and really violent and obvious. And you can grieve without having to villainize somebody. You all just grew apart. That's okay. Or, you can villainize them too if you want to. You can honor love that no longer exists. It existed at one time. And what was there got you to where you are today. And yes, the ending was probably very hard, but don't overlook how it made you into what you are today. So let's talk about sealing. Sealing, not the ceiling over our heads. Because endings don't stick unless you actually do something physical or something with your body, your spirit, and your mind. Those three things help to actually seal that ending and leave it behind for good. It isn't necessarily dramatic destruction. It can be. It isn't forgetting what happened before. It isn't pretending that something didn't matter that happened before. Sealing is how we stop an ending from bleeding into our present. And that is what's important. We don't want to bring those things with us. We don't want them seeping into our current lives. That's why we need an ending. This is how witches close things off across time. So, what sealing actually means is containment. You're not deleting the experience, you're putting it where it belongs, behind you, in the past. Think of it like this: memories stay memories, lessons stay lessons, what you learned stays learned, but the energy stops actively circulating into your current life. We're not banishing the file, we're archiving it. Sealing is acknowledgement. Nothing gets sealed if it's denied. Actually, that's a very, very true statement. Witchcraft doesn't work on avoidance. You have to name the thing before you can close it. So that's why sealing rituals often involve speaking an ending out loud or writing it down or marking it somehow physically. You are telling the universe and yourself, yes, this happened. Yes, I saw it. And then once you acknowledge that and say that out loud, then you can seal it. Unacknowledged endings tend to turn into pop-up windows, and they will interrupt your life later. So sealing is boundary setting across time. This is the part that people don't talk about enough. Sealing says past you does not get to run present you. Old patterns don't have a vote in my life anymore. And that era is done, and I'm speaking into my own decisions now. It's not rejection, it's jurisdiction. Jurisdiction's a good way to put that. Time is a shared space, and we're setting boundaries with earlier versions of ourselves. So, some sealing practices that are simple and effective, you might want to consider these because they involve final physical actions, and they help your nervous system find that clear ending that it really, really wants. So you can writing and closing letters. You don't send them. This is one of the cleanest sealing methods that there is. You write a letter to a person, a version of yourself, a belief, a role that you're releasing. Say everything, no editing, no politeness. Then fold it, seal it in an envelope, place it somewhere closed, like a drawer, a box, a book, the freezer. Um, I actually like the idea of burning, even though this one is supposed to not be a violent one. But I kind of like fire. I am a fire witch. So burning to me is always the way to go when you're ending something. But anyway, you can also bury an object tied to an era. This works great for like old labels, former identities, relationships, spiritual phases. You choose something symbolic. Okay, no, we're not actually burying our ex. That's not okay. Um, but you can choose a symbolic something to bury your ex. Jewelry, paper, a key, a charm, a written word. And you can bury it in soil or a plant pot or a box of earth if you want to. And that says this chapter is complete and it returns to rest. You don't throw it away, you don't destroy it, it's just simply laid to rest. You've been through it, it did what it did, you learned what you learned, and it's done, and you're moving forward. Another ritual you can do is washing hands after naming an ending. This one is deceptively powerful. So after you say your ending out loud, go to the sink and wash your hands slowly and deliberately. And as you run the water over your hands, say, I release what is no longer active. And this kind of resets your nervous system and it marks a before and after time. Your body actually feels that physical change from the past to the future. You've cleaned the past. I think that one's pretty cool. And then lighting candles and extinguishing them intentionally. Of course, flames, fire, you know me, I love. Light the candle, name what is ending, sit with it briefly. No long vigil is needed, and then extinguish it on purpose. You don't blow it out accidentally. You don't forget it and just let it burn out. You're ending it intentionally. That act of intentionally snuffing that flame is the ending. And this works especially well for long transitions, grief, ongoing situations that finally resolve. On a calendar or a journal or a planner, you can write the final date, circle it, close the book. That's physically closing the book, and then that motion, that doing matters. So sealing isn't erasing. It's just saying this happened, it mattered, but it's no longer active. You can honor something without keeping it open. That's not avoidance, that's maturity. This matters because unsealed endings can loop into your life, they leak into your life, they resurface during stress, they show up in dreams and habits or in resentments. Sealing endings becomes wisdom. It becomes memory. It stops asking for attention. So if you got them sealed, it it helps you move forward cleanly. There's no rushing, no bypassing, no pretending. You're facing it head on, you're dealing with it head on, and you're moving forward. Now, that time right after you close something, that is a liminal space. There is a liminal space after an ending right before the new beginning. So what happens? What happens when you've closed one door, but the next one hasn't opened yet? I mean, here is something no one ever warns you about. Often there's just nothing. There's no clarity yet. There's no new label. You just knew you were done with the old one. There's no new shiny beginning necessarily. It's just quiet. And that silence can feel unsettling, especially for witches who are used to doing things. Um, in witchcraft, that space is liminal, and liminal spaces, as we know, are magical. So use that time if you don't immediately have a new opening, after the closing. Use that liminal space. It's powerful. It's the pause between your breaths. It's the dark moon. It's the field after harvest, but before you plant. There is nothing wrong here. You don't need to rush to fill that space. It's okay to linger. It's okay to be in that liminal soft spot for a little bit. You don't need to immediately define what comes next. And if you've sealed something properly, that stillness is a sign that it actually worked. Just let yourself be undefined for a moment. It's not being lost. It's just being unassigned. You're just not assigned yet. And then how do you know if the ending really sealed it? How do you know if you really left it behind? Did I do it right? Is it really ended? So here's how you can know if an ending is sealed, not intellectually, but energetically. You're going to notice things like you think about it without that spike of emotion. You remember without rehearsing conversations. I wish I had said this. I wish I had said that. You stop feeling that urge to explain or justify. I did this because I only did this because this. The story feels finished. Even if it wasn't fair, even if you aren't happy with the ending, it is ended. I mean, I think that's really important. You don't get that spike of emotion with it. I think that to me, that's the most accurate description of how you know that that ending is ended. You don't necessarily feel happy, you feel neutral about that, whatever it is that you closed. If it still hurts sometimes, that's human. But if it no longer hooks you and brings you back to that, then it's sealed. And sometimes you aren't ready to end things. That's just the truth of it. Sometimes in your brain, you're like, yeah, I should end this. But sometimes energetically, you're just not ready to yet. So if you're not ready to seal something yet, that doesn't mean you're failing. That's okay. Some endings need time, safety, distance, support. Sometimes, my husband, when we watch those dating shows on TV, we like reality TV shows sometimes. He calls it the monkey swinging from the tree, where you've got um, this person who is not letting go of their current relationship until they have that next one hooked. They can't take that time to have that liminal space of freedom. Um, sometimes it's okay to still hang on to where you are and not reach for an empty string to hang on to if you still are needing that safety and time and support. Witchcraft isn't about forcing closure. It's about making sure that your body and your spirit agree that it's time to close it. There is a difference between avoiding an ending and not being resourced enough to close it yet. Two different things. And they're not the same thing, and you shouldn't feel like you're failing because you're not ready yet. You can't seal something when you're still trying to survive. And if that's where you are, your only job is containment, not closure. Protection first, seal later. So if you're ready to close something, you can place your hand on your chest or your thigh, feel where you are. Now, quietly or out loud, finish this sentence. I acknowledge the ending of blank. You fill in the blank. No fixing it, no explaining it, just naming it. And then you pause and you say, it mattered. I am allowed to move on. It's no longer active. That's it. That's the seal. No fireworks, no drama, just authority. Sometimes you can do fire. Like that's what I like to do. I like to do fire, but it doesn't require that. Sometimes the mature thing to do is to just state what it is and state that, yes, it's done. I know it's done. My body knows, my mind knows, my energy knows, my spirit knows, and it's time to move on. Witchcraft isn't about clinging, it's about knowing when to release with intention. Sometimes witchcraft is about strength, the strength to know when to move on. Endings aren't curses. It's not a bad thing. They're conclusions. And when witches end things properly, they don't drag the past into the future. They let it rest in peace, hopefully. So, hopefully, you guys enjoyed this episode. I enjoyed researching it because it is, like I said, it's this time the brand new year is here and we're leaving behind the old year. And there is a lot that I wanted to leave behind in last year. And I did. I used my fire to put behind me my struggles that I had with my health last year. But I'm still dealing with them. I'm not done with the healing, but I'm done with the fear that I had while I was trying to go through the fear I had that I was never going to be able to read again, the fear that I had that I wasn't going to be able to walk with these leg issues that I had. A lot of fear got left behind. And I have moved forward. I have closed that stage because I am healed to the point of moving forward. And I don't have that pang of worry or fear anymore when I think about my brain injury and my ankle and leg being broken and all the surgeries I had last year. And so I have moved forward with hope this year. I have embraced the new year. I downloaded off of Etsy. There's a witchy lady that does every year I buy her thing. It's $10 on Etsy and it's a witchy self-care thing. And every year I download it and I love it. So I've already done that this year. I've already started making my own little calendar, which for my patrons, I will put it up once I get it done. Um, 2026 calendar that I like to use. So yeah, I'm moving into the new year. I'm very, very happy right now. I'm in that optimistic point. So we'll see how long it goes. Cross your fingers. But thank you all for listening. Thank you all that are supporting us for supporting us. Any patrons that support us, if you support us on Patreon, then you get extra goodies. We've got, like, I'll be posting the 2026 calendar before long. We do to-do lists. We do drink recipes. We do all kinds of fun things that our patrons get. That regular listeners don't get. So if you would love to support us, that would be great. It helps us, and I hope that you enjoy us enough to try to help us too. Um, what else? I'm trying to get my Etsy store up. I think I say that every month at least once, but I am trying really hard this year to get that going, making more things. I've got a whole bunch of resin molds that I'm going to be making things with. I've been making dice and some pipes that I'm working on. Fun stuff. But anyway, um, I hope you all have a wonderful day and we'll be back. And until then, stay witchy.